Okay, I forgot to tell y'all something that happened the other day. It happened last Saturday. Actually, it happened prior to that. It happened at the park, one of the parks here in Columbia. You will not find it on the news because some things are not allowed to be released publicly. And I found out through witnessing and through talking to somebody else, or else I wouldn't know about it either. So I went there in the evening. It was dark out, and I saw a van that was parked across the parking lot. And I was kind of creeped out by it because, you know, vans can be bad, really bad. And I don't, I was by myself. And I went the next night, and the van was still there, which was weird. Same exact spot, had not moved. I was creeped out again, but I paid close attention. Then a few days pass, and I'm talking to one of the guys who goes to the park all the time. And he starts telling me that he went there last Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning. He said, and there were people walking around with these white overalls on, booties on their shoes, and gloves, and the whole bit. And the van was about to be towed. And I said, was it a white van? And his jaw hit the ground. How do you know it's a white van? I said, because I saw it 2 nights in a row. And I was kind of creeped out by it. He said, did you approach it? I said, no, because I'm a female by myself. And I said, when, oh man, sorry, when he talked about the people with the white overalls and the booties on their shoes, I said, somebody died. Those are forensic people. He goes, yeah, yes, those are forensic investigators. They're collecting, or crime scene investigators. They're collecting evidence that person died. Because I'm putting two and two together. They're investigating with their protective things on to not, obviously not disturb any evidence. And that person sitting there like that, obviously the person died. And there's a possibility that I was there when the body was not too far away, either in the van or out in the wooded area. I don't know which, but I was not going anywhere near it. Okay. Vans can be very dangerous for women in particular because that person could have they could grab you, throw you in the back of it. It's a safety thing. There could be ropes in there, gags, a shovel, rope. There could be all kinds of really bad, gloves, all kinds of bad things that don't result in good things for the person snatched. Usually women. So we know to stay the hell away from vans in certain situations, especially. And it was just weird. There is a strong possibility I was there when that person's body was there. And I wasn't, like I said, it's dark enough outside that I'm not gonna, I'm not going anywhere near that. Okay. And, it's just weird. It's just another creepy thing. And it did not hit the news because the person that I was talking to about the type of van it was, he said, I searched everywhere online and I can't find it anywhere. I said, yeah, some things are not going to be released to the public. Okay. I'll give you another example of something that was never released to the public. It was on a military base overseas. And only reason I know about it is because the military person told me about it. A woman had gotten pregnant and she was in the hospital having, going into labor. And I believe she was married, and a man came up to the hospital with allegedly her lover's head in a bag, brought it up to the hospital. So apparently he found out about it and eliminated that person and brought that person's head. You would never see that on any news anywhere ever, because that was not released to the public. And like I said, the only reason I know about it is because I was told about that from a military member, previous military member. Really weird, bizarre things. Really weird. Creepy. I was more creeped out not because there could be a body in there, because there's no way I would know that, right? But I was still nevertheless creeped out because vans, like I said, that can mean bad news for women, especially for women. Or, for someone wants to, kidnap a child or something like that. But women are taught or find out through social media, or they find out through growing up or listening to shows that talk about this is how you stay safe. And it is well known. Men probably don't know nothing about this, but women know to stay away from vans, especially in parking garages, if you can help it. Be aware of your surroundings at all times and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, he just stared. He was gobsmacked when I said, was it a white van? Like, how the hell do you know that? Because I saw it 2 days in a row. 2 nights I saw it. 2 nights in a row I saw it. So that's strange. Really, really strange. Really strange. I know of another situation. This happened in. Sorry about that. I just hit the screen. Another situation. The only reason I know this is because my friend worked for OSI, which is the Office of Special Investigations with the military. There was a guy in Nam Nostra State Park. This was many years ago. I don't know if he was on something. I don't know if he was nuts. I don't know what was going on with him, but he made a hole in the ground and was doing it like he was doing a woman. That probably was never released either. Okay. Some things are just not released. And like I said, if my friend didn't work for OSI, I wouldn't know anything about it. I had responded to, I was working as a volunteer for the hospital on a military base, and we responded to someone who had gotten hurt. And I'm thinking we're going to go pick up this patient and transport them. And nope, that wasn't going to happen, because when we got there, that person was sitting on the couch, deceased. And you could tell she had shorts on, and you could see the mottling in her legs, which is basically the purpley bluish colors. The legs get really dark because the blood's not flowing anymore, and it'll settle to the lowest part of the body. And the doctor pronounced her unseen, and there was something sticking out of her t-shirt, the front of her t-shirt. And I asked the doctor, what is that? He said lung tissue. So apparently, and the weapon was still on scene. And I found out after the fact what actually happened. What happened was there were two military couples that were all friends, and the women were into each other, and they were leaving their husbands to run off, take the kids and run off with each other. And one of the women, I know, and like I said, I know only because my friend told me, because she worked for OSI and she knew the backstory that I didn't know. I saw her x-ray after she was deceased. and they took her to the hospital, and there were BBs all over her entire body, just sprayed through her whole body. And in her pelvic area was a circular thing that I didn't know what that was. And I asked the medical tech, I said, "What is that?" He said, "A diaphragm." Women know what this is if you've ever used one. Uh, it's used for birth control. You insert it and it blocks the cervix, and you also use like a, um, I don't remember if it's like a foam or something, but it's something that you also, I don't know if you put it on the diaphragm first. I can't remember. I used one way back in the day. But you use it with a spermicide, which means you have to keep it in for a certain period of time after you've been intimate with someone. So I do believe if you're not being intimate with your partner, there's no reason for it to be in there, right? So then I put two and two together that she had been intimate with him within a certain time frame and then dropped the news on him later, or he found out later that she was leaving him, and he decided, no, the hell you ain't. Because why else would the diaphragm be in there? And he had taken, her husband was the one who eliminated her. He had taken the kids to the movies and left, kind of acted like I don't know if he acted like he went to the restroom or whatever, went to the house, did what he felt like he needed to do to get rid of her, and then went back to the movie theater as if nothing ever happened. And they had me go through the medical records to see if there was any information about her being depressed or on any type of medications that are related to depression or anxiety or anything like that. Because I was going to make records of that, make notations of it. Happened a long time ago, but it's always like it happened yesterday because I had never responded to a scene of a homicide before. And it stays with you. It definitely, the way everything looked, the floor plan, the house. She was downstairs in the basement in military housing. And you always, like your brain takes a snapshot of the crime scene and it never forgets the crime scene, if that makes sense. Like almost like your brain is a camera, like it takes a picture of it in a weird way, and you never forget that image no matter how many years have passed. There was another incident, and I told you guys about this a really long time ago, where my neighbor had, well, let's put it this way. My best friend and her husband lived in the house that was cat-a-corner from my house where I used to live. And he was military. He had a girlfriend. And they had bought the house when my best friend and her husband relocated. They sold their house to him. Well, we'll call him David. So David bought the house. He had a girlfriend. She was always over there. And David had a terrible temper, which his friends told me after the fact. And they had gone to a bar. And of course, alcohol's involved. And he had a bad temper anyway. So obviously that's a bad deal. He gets angry. He gets jealous. They went back to the house and he assaulted her, physically, violently assaulted her. And then he got arrested. This was Saturday night when they got back. He got arrested, and then Sunday morning he was released on his own recognizance, and he had called her on the phone and said, I'm sorry for what I did, and I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. And then he took a weapon of some sort. I think it was a shotgun or a rifle. I don't know which. I think it was a shotgun. And proceeded to his head. And she heard everything because she was still on the phone. I didn't find out about it till after the fact. And I'm like looking out the window and I see all these military people swarming the house, picking up all his stuff, putting everything in boxes. And I'm like protective of my neighbors. And I'm thinking, why are they messing with all his stuff? And then I was cooking something and I saw my neighbor that was directly across from me. Our backyards faced each other. And I said hi to her and she said, "Did you hear what happened to him?" And I said, "No." And then she told me and I'm stuttering and I'm right in the middle of cooking. So I've got something on the stove and I'm like, what? What? So I took the food off the stove and I went outside to talk to her and she told me what happened. Her or his friends he had a huge garden and his friends said to me, "Help yourself to anything you want in the garden." I said, "I can't do that. I can't take his stuff." They're like, please help yourself. And if there's anyone else could use the food, by all means, because otherwise it'll go to waste. At least something good could come out of this. They also told me, I offered my condolences to them, and they also told me he had a horrible temper. And of course, alcohol is going to make that worse. And that's why he was so physically violent with her that night. And I also found out where she worked. And I told her, I apologized to her. I'm sorry for what you're going through. And if there's anything you need, let me know. I mean, she don't know me from a can of paint, but he had hit her so hard in her mouth that she had to have stitches on the inside and outside of her lip. I don't understand why, when you have a jealous partner, why would you allow alcohol to creep into the picture? Why are you going to bars? Bars are notorious for arguing, fighting, jealousy. What the F are you looking at? What the F are you looking at, bitch? We could step outside. Nothing good comes out of bars, you know, unless you're not a jealous person and you don't have a bad temper and alcohol don't bring out the worst in you, then you could probably go there like a mature adult and have a few drinks, not get wasted because you're going to drive back home, right? Nobody needs to lose their life because you were intoxicated. It's just crazy. I mean, certain situations just exacerbate, you know, behaviors that are not really the best. It's weird, but because my best friend had lived at the house that he had bought, I knew the room he did it in. And the reason I know that is because I walked around the house. This is going to sound crazy as hell. I walked around the house and I touched the house and I actually prayed. And I was talking to him and I was like, "David, why did you feel the need to do that? Why did you do that?" And it's like I don't know, it's just weird. It was this weird way of me dealing with it because I had never met anyone who had done that. And I knew the room that he did it in because the shade was up a little bit and I looked in there and you could see where the carpet was brand new. Carpet was obviously taken up for obvious reasons, and there's drawings on the floor where there were, projectiles and whatnot. And it took me a long time. I don't know, maybe, I don't really know. I could only ballpark it at a few months or something to recover from it, because that's pretty deep. And let's reverse. Before the drama hit, I don't talk to people I don't know. I might say hi to you, but I keep it moving unless I'm just in a mood to be, out there. Hey, how you doing? But I normally, a lot of times I kind of shy away from that being, just being the first person to initiate. And I saw them all outside having a barbecue that one day, and I heard somebody say, "Well, I want a hot dog." And I had just pulled into I had just pulled into my where I park, and I overheard them say, a person said they want a hot dog or whatever it was, and I said, "Well, I want a hamburger." And they're like, "Well, come on over here. Come on, come on." I said, "No, no, 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 no." I was laughing. I was like, "No, no, no. Next time, next time." And they're like, "Yeah, right. Like, you ain't coming over here," kind of thing. And I just kind of laughed and went about my business because I don't know them from a can of paint, and I'm shy, and I just didn't. And then I found out everything that happened afterwards, everything that happened after the fact, and it was just insane. And I said, "Well, I'm thinking to myself, how do we go from a barbecue get together with friends to a violent physical assault to jail to, you know, the person eliminating themselves?" I mean, that's a lot of jumps in one short span. A lot. A lot. His friends had told me one time him and his girlfriend had came home from going out, and she was struggling with the screen door or something. Yeah, I think the screen door was jammed or something. She couldn't get open. He yanked it completely off of its track or the hinges. Physically yanked it off. He said, "Are you happy now?" And I'm like, they told me about that. I said, "You're kidding me." They said, "No, he always had a bad temper." Life has so many twists and turns. So many twists and turns. And you just, so unpredictable. But I mean, like I said, if you know your partner's prone to jealousy, a bar is not the best place for you all to hang out at. Y'all need to go to a movie or a museum, something calming, a planetarium, something, and truth be told, he would have obviously benefited from anger management. I mean, you can't go your whole life like that, because even if none of that happened, you could give yourself a heart attack or a stroke because you flip out one time too many, and that's the end. Prevention is the key. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. But anyway, those are some things that I never talk about. I do not ever I just don't talk about those things. I just don't. But it kind of feels good to talk about it. Obviously didn't give specifics or names of the military bases or anything like that. And I wouldn't ever give out the person's real name. Not that I remember anyway, but I wouldn't give out their real name for obvious reasons. The husband did get caught and, served time. And I don't know anything about the legal aspect of it, but just crazy. Absolutely crazy. So anyway, you guys take care. If you've got an anger problem or a depression problem, please do something about that. It's going to benefit you and your loved ones. And it will improve your quality of life, obviously. Because people will eventually leave you alone because they know that you're unpredictable, and they would just leave you the hell alone, which is going to increase your symptomology, and you really don't want that. So it's better to grab the bull by the horns and get the professional help that you need. All right? You guys take care. Much love. Bye.